Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guests, but first, let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs for their support. You know, Wall of Fame is on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles and an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or learn more and get started with your digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589 or email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to thank our good friends at Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. To learn more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program, go to hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while bringing excitement to the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and find out what these fantastic products can do for you. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. They sponsor the AD's Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack also puts you in touch with the 95% of the families who really love your program, and it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack at athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack and let them help you take your athletic department from good to great. And we want to thank Violet Defense for their support. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Go to violetdefense.com for more information about their great products. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to Maryland and the DC area today, and we're going to visit with Patty Medina. Patty is the Associate Athletic Director at Harford Community College. Really just got started with that position, so we're excited to hear what's going on. She's also the founder of what's called the Hooper Mentality Foundation, and she's going to talk about that a little bit later. And then if she didn't have enough on her plate, she's currently in the process of completing her doctoral studies to earn that PhD in psychology and mental health. Wow, full plate, definitely. Patty Medina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Jake, for having me. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here and share my journey in the athletic director world. So thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We connected like, a lot of people do these days, through LinkedIn, and wanted to get you on the podcast and kind of share the things that you have been doing. So let's go and get started. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school and college, and kind of the path that's brought you now to, create Hooper mentality and also work at Harford Community College.
Yeah, so crazy story, the immigrant story. I was born in Mexico. I grew up in, sorry about that. I was born in Mexico, grew up in San Diego. And, funny story is that nobody really knows, not until I got older, nobody really knew that I was an illegal immigrant until I was 17. And so when I was in high school, college was not something that we considered, because at the time we didn't have the resources that students now have, like the Dream Act and all these opportunities that allow immigrant students to go to college. And so it was never anything that I really like set my heart on, because I didn't want to be disappointed and not be able to go, because I didn't have, my social security number and things like that. And so it wasn't until like 3 months before my 18th birthday, my dad ended up taking the test, and naturalized. And so because I was under 18, I was able to obtain U.S. citizenship. And so I ended up pretty much just going up to whatever university I had been accepted to. And at that time, it was Dominican University. So I went to Dominican University in the Bay Area. I went there for a year, and I was getting ready to play on their basketball team. And then I decided, like most students, to buy myself a car. So I bought a car, and I wanted to, I don't know why I wanted to have a car payment. So I ended up having a car payment. And next, I ended up, becoming an adult sooner than I wish I would have. And I try to tell these young adults now, like, don't be in a rush to be an adult. And so ended up moving back to San Diego, finished my studies at San Diego State. But when I moved back, my high school coach asked if I wanted to coach middle school basketball. Since I wasn't playing, I wasn't going to play at San Diego State. So he was like, do you want to coach? And so I started coaching. And at the time I was 17, 18 years old. And I was coaching, 14, 15-year-olds. And so it was one of those things where it became a sisterhood for me. And I fell in love with coaching. I enjoyed coaching more than I did playing. And so I realized at a very young age that I wanted to continue to be a coach, and I wanted to move up the ranks and just continue to be a mentor to these young ladies. And so I did it the grassroots way, because I don't have college playing experience. I had to really show my work ethic and show my knowledge. A lot of times when you play at the collegiate level, a lot of these opportunities are presented to you because you played, but I didn't play collegiate basketball. And so I really had to, go the nitty gritty grind. And I coached middle school for a couple of years, and I did JV for a couple of years. And then I became a practice player and volunteer coach for a junior college. And so I started as a practice player and volunteer coach for a junior college. And then from there, they were like, hey, you're here as much as our assistant coaches, if not more. Do you want to get on staff? And so I ended up on the staff. And that's when my collegiate coaching career began. I was at the junior college level for 6 years as a coach. And then when I turned 30, I had the opportunity to become a head coach. And so I was head coach at an NCCAA institution. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a Christian college. Yeah. So I was at the NCCAA institution. Another grind, we didn't have the resources that a lot of schools have. We didn't have a gym. We didn't have a practice facility. We didn't have any of those resources. And so I really learned how to grind even as a head coach. And so fast forward, I ended up being a college head coach for 3 years. And then the upside of the sports world is, when there's a change in leadership, there's change in staffing. And so one thing led to another. I ended up in Texas as an assistant coach at Our Lady of the Lake University, which is an amazing institution. Ended up there for a year. And by then, I'm also a mom. So I'm also a single mom. And so by the time my son was getting ready to start middle school, I told myself I needed to take a break from coaching just because of the time commitment. And so I knew that I didn't want to be out of sports completely. And so then I had an opportunity to interview and apply for a position as an assistant athletic director at a high school out here in Maryland. And so I ended up taking that. And then from there, my athletic director there is super supportive, just poured into me. And he says, this isn't your last stop. You need to, keep moving up, keep moving up. And so here I am at Harford. So it's definitely, I'm sure any former coach that is listening right now, they know that any opportunity with coaching requires getting up, not any and every, but most of the time you're required to get up, uproot, and move to another city. Wherever opportunity comes, you kind of go as a coach. And so it's great to have an idea of stability. It's great to have just be in a position where I know that I can be here, for a while.
I always love to hear the stories, and you brought up a couple of, I think, really important points for our listeners, particularly those younger ADs that might be listening or coaches. You talked about you getting started really at a very young level, just out of high school and college, and those experiences can really be, foundational and life-changing building blocks for, any coach. And it's, the message is take advantage of those opportunities when they're presented. You also brought up the idea of, being willing to maybe step outside your comfort zone, travel across the country. I look at my own path, growing up in Oregon. I moved all over climbing that ladder within the state because I wanted to be a high school head coach and at a big school, and went from small school to middle school to big school, and then wanted to be a college coach, and went from Oregon to Missouri to Vermont to North Florida to San Jose, California, to Arkansas, and then finally settling the last 20 years in Florida. But again, great experiences, great opportunities. And, you've certainly, been a great representative of that, you talk about the grind. The other part of that is embracing the grind. And you've certainly done that. Let's talk a little bit about some of those experiences. You mentioned, working, it certainly wasn't Division I, but still college athletes and competitive. Talk about some of the challenges, working, let's say, at a non-Division I school, that it's not all glamour. Again, I coached some small college for several years, but share with our listeners, what are some of the challenges? It's great to be a college coach, but there's also some challenges that go with it.
Yeah, and interesting enough is that when I was young and I wanted to become a head coach, I kept telling myself, I want to be a head coach before I turn 30. And so I ended up getting this job literally like a month before my 30th birthday. But now in retrospect, my, what's the word I'm looking for? My, not overbearing, my, just my excitement to become a head coach, I really sold myself short and accepted, like, at that point, any opportunity that was coming, because everyone's feedback was, all you need is to get your foot in the door. All you need is to get your foot in the door, which I get it. But I wish somebody would have told me you deserve better, or told me, like, this is your worth, ask for it, because just fully transparent, my first college head coaching job, I made $8,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
I made $8,000 a year, and I was working 2 full-time jobs. I was working a graveyard shift and a daytime shift, and coaching and being a single mother, so it got to the point where, like, it was overwhelming. And the people that, were my mentors at the time were saying, like, oh, well, when I started, I didn't make any money either. And, this is how you grind. This is how you go up. And now in retrospect, I'm like, I wish somebody would have told me, like, hey, walk into that office, know what you bring to the table, know what you can do to this program, and ask for what you think you deserve. And it didn't have to be $50,000, $60,000 a year, but I mean, enough for me to not have to work, 2 full-time jobs and coach at the same time. So one thing, that's the word, overzealous. I was very overzealous when I wanted to become a head coach. And like I said, there's a lot of coaches right now that are taking very just they're taking offers that they in the back of their mind know that it's pretty much like free labor at that point, and it's one of those things that for me, I was nervous, I was young, I had no like sense of confidence to walk into an office and say, hey, this is what I'm doing around the clock, this is what I'm doing on, even for the second year, because I was at that school for 2 years. Like, I could have walked into that office after having brought in 14 players and getting Division I guaranteed games and bringing in revenue and all that. I could have, had I had the right mentorship, I could have walked into that office and said, hey, this is what I did in a year with little to no resources. Imagine what I can do for this institution if you guys actually helped me with some resources, and so one thing that I have a mentor of mine, she's at college, she's still a Division I coach, and I used to play against her, we used to coach against each other. She was at Vanguard. Jana, I always say Jana, it's Jana, and she was like, Patty, I swear you can turn water into wine, and she was like, the things you're doing with this program, she's like, your record, we were winning some games, we were losing some, we were getting our butts kicked, but at the end of the day, like, those girls played hard. And so that was one of the things that I realized is like, the right people will see your work ethic, the right people will honor your work ethic, and the right people won't make you feel like you're tooting your own horn for asking for what you deserve, and so I wish that's something that someone would have told me, at a young age, because that's not to say I wouldn't have taken those opportunities. I probably still would have, but I would have known that, hey, the things that you're bringing to the table, not a lot of people can do this, and so you should be able to ask for more. And I didn't have that confidence, and I didn't feel like I had that backup, so that was one of the things that for me growing up, like I said, we take opportunity wherever we can get it, and if you're a hard worker and you have this strong drive, you're going to make do with whatever you have, right? You're going to make do with whatever you have. And I think there's a lot of institutions that take advantage of that. They take advantage of the fact that, hey, if we pay this coach the minimum, he's still going to go above and beyond. So why not keep it at that? And it's like, at the end of the day, that's what we're judged on, is like the wins and losses. But you start to realize like, hey, they're putting in a lot of work, and so in the 16 years that I coached, I not once had a female athletic director. So not once did I have someone that I could go into their office and bounce off ideas or say, hey, this is how I'm feeling, like, whatever it may be. And so for me, when I decided to make that transition, it was like, I want to represent the women that I didn't know, I didn't have it. I didn't have that representation. I didn't have anyone to advocate for me. So that's definitely, like I said, the grind is a gift and a curse, because, you do so much with so little, but at the same time, we get used to doing that. We get used to doing that it becomes our MO. So it's like, hey, we're going to make do regardless of whether we get paid or not, but at the end of the day, like, we should be able to know what we bring to the table and make sure that it's acknowledged.
No, absolutely. You brought up several really good points there. You hit on the one, again, know your worth.
Right.
And again, you're not going to go in there and dictate market conditions, but you know what, you need to survive. You also need to know what it's going to take for you to thrive in that situation. And again, the colleges, as you alluded to, they know that there's a bunch of coaches out there that want that job. And so, treading that fine line, that tightrope between, hey, I really want this job. In some cases, I really need this job, but also being an advocate for yourself. Those are definitely tools that need to go in the toolbox. For our listeners, we're visiting with Patty Medina. She's the Associate Athletic Director at Harford Community College in the DC area, also the founder of the Hooper Mentality Foundation. We're going to hear about both of those, but let's take a quick break and hear from our podcast sponsors. This is the Educational AD Podcast.
Good.
We want to thank Huddle for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. More than 180,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their teams play better through video and analytics. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras, of course, there's analytics, and a whole lot more. Huddle's built for every level of play, from club and youth teams up through high school and college programs, and even professional teams are using Huddle to help their teams play better. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. You want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Hey, we're back with Patty Medina, the Associate Athletic Director at Harford Community College in the DC area. Patty, you recently took a position as the Associate AD, and I'm going to have you share a little bit about that. But first, in the previous segment, you talked about one of your mentors. And in our profession, as you really did a great job of describing, mentoring is so important. So who are some of the other mentors that you've had in your life that have helped you along the way and helped you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I'm a strong believer that mentors come in all ages. So I have mentors that are older than me, mentors that are my age, and I even have mentors that are younger than me. Especially during these changing times and social media times, it's important to have mentors that you trust with, social media or marketing. And, I have mentors that help me with that aspect. I have mentors that help me with my professional life and also, being a mother. So like I have mentors in different areas. One of my main mentors is actually a friend of mine who was a teammate of mine in high school. And so she was a teammate of mine in high school. She ended up playing basketball at Grossmont College in San Diego, and then ended up playing at UC San Diego, and they won the NCAA championship there. And just over the years, we've evolved together as professionals and as obviously as friends, but we bounce off ideas. She was a very crucial part in the start of Hooper Mentality, which we'll talk about later. But like I said, she's a colleague of mine, and it's important for me to have people that have been with me since I was young, and also people that I just met. Another mentor of mine is Clyde. He's I can never pronounce his last name. Clyde Dowdy. He's the athletic director at Bowie State. And so when I decided to make the transition from coaching to, college admin, I reached out to different people, especially on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn for me is one of my favorite social media outlets because I've made amazing connections, even with you. Like that's how we connected. It's been very important in my transgression as an athletic director. And so I met Clyde via social media. We built a relationship, a professional relationship. And then when I did move out to the DMV area, I asked if I could come into his office and just pick his brain about the career, and he was like, of course. We came in, we were having great conversations. And then when I had the interview for this job, I was given scenarios that I was supposed to respond to and answer to. And obviously I knew the right answer, but I wanted the correct answer as far as like the athletic director answer. And so I called him and I was like, hey, I'm having an anxiety attack because these prompts are overwhelming and I know what to say, but I want to make sure that I say the right things, like what are the right, what's the right process, you know? And so I met up with him. We had a sit down. I read to him the prompts. He asked me what I thought was my answer. And then he said, yes, this is right, or no, this is right, you know? And so anytime there's a situation, and obviously he's at the Division II NCAA level, and he's at an HBCU, so they deal with different stuff, but at the same time, it's still an athletic department, you know, and you're handling similar situations. And so he's been very crucial in my athletic director position. Another one who I also met on LinkedIn was Patrick Crary. He's the men's basketball head coach and one of the assistant athletic directors down in St. Thomas in Florida. And when I initially met him, he was here in the DMV area, in the DC area at Washington Adventist. And so same thing, I was bouncing, you know, ideas off of him. And one of the things that I realized is that when I decided to transition into athletic admin, I kept feeling like, oh, all I did was coach. You know, I was a coach. All I did was coach. And he was just like, what do you mean? Like, you ran these programs by yourself. Like, you were practically your own SID. You were practically like, you know, literally doing everything that an AD would do or supervise. So you're more than willing, more than capable, more than apt to become an AD. And so when that imposter syndrome was kicking in, you know, these mentors come very in handy because they'll speak life into you and they will motivate you and they'll remind you of, you know, what you bring to the table. So those two and those two were very important in my life as far as like my transition from coaching to, you know, athletic director. And then my other mentor, who's younger than me, is Anessa Wolf-Black. She's actually the assistant coach at San Diego Christian College, and so she's a former player of mine, and you know, took the coaching route as well. So we bounce off ideas off of her, and you know, she tells me, her being a young coach, you know, she tells me the struggles that she's going through, and I kind of get to reaffirm her, like, hey, we all went through those struggles, and vice versa. You know, she'll hype me up. She's like my personal hype man, and I'm hers. And so it's pretty awesome to have people like that in your life that will just speak life into you. So I'm all about mentorships. I read books, I listen to audiobooks about mentorship, you know, and it's important to be able to do that for others. So, and I've also had the honor of being a mentor for others.
It's so great that you have that ongoing relationship. It's not, you know, a mentor from 10 or 20 years ago, that they're still very much part of your life. And again, you brought up another great point about preparing for the interview. I've done that a number of times with other, you know, athletic directors or coaches. You know, we've done kind of that mock interview, and it's not so much a right or a wrong answer. It's, you know, expressing yourself, you know, articulating whatever point you want to share, and then, you know, defending it. And just, you know, that practice is always a good thing. Very cool stuff. As I mentioned, you just recently took your current position as the associate AD at Harford Community College. Talk a little bit about, you know, the program. What are some things that drew you to the school? What are some things you're excited about doing? You know, not everyone's had that position at a college or a community college level. What's it like?
So today's the start of week 3. So I've been here. This is the start of my 3rd week. And I love it. The more I get to meet the coaches, the more I get to talk to the coaches about their goals and, you know, their teams, the more I fall in love with it. And so one of the exciting things about Harford is that when I interviewed, they were very specific about what the expectations were coming in. You know, the interview process was very specific. The interview process was very detailed. And then not only that, once I got here, they made me feel very comfortable in a sense that, hey, we want a woman in this position. Like, we want a woman and a woman of color, and we're going to support her as long as, you know, she continues to support our program. And so Ed Leash is my athletic director. He's an advocate for women in sports. He's an advocate for women in leadership positions. And so he's been, you know, speaking life into me as far as like, I'll ask him something, and like part of me wants to ask for permission for everything, and he's like, Patty, that's just gonna make us look good. Like, you don't have to ask me for permission. Like, you're good. Like, just if you think it's right and it's gonna help the program, by all means, go ahead. And so, but a lot of times, like I said, we underestimate ourselves, or we question ourselves, and so that was one of the things that for me was very important. That as I met Ed through the interview process, I realized like, hey, he's gonna back me up. He's gonna support me, and he's gonna support women in leadership. And so in the 2 weeks that I've been here, one of my main goals was to have one-on-one with the coaches. And so, as I mentioned, I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts. And so one of the audiobooks that I was listening to, it's called Habits for Greatness. And so it talks about how to be a leader, how to get embedded in a new organization. And so one of the best practices per se that they were talking about was building rapport, right? Building rapport, because you don't want the first time you interact with someone to be a negative reason. You don't want it to be a reason as to, like, I don't want the first time I meet the tennis coach for me to tell the tennis coach that she went over her hours, or that she wasn't supposed to be in the office or whatever. Like, I want to be able to build rapport with the coaches so that when I do have to interact with them in another way, then they know that it's coming from a place of honest and truth. It's not just, oh, she's attacking me or she doesn't like me. They know that I like them because we've had plenty of conversations before anything came up. So that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I built rapport and that I met other coaches, and I've been able to do that for the most part. Obviously, being with this COVID era, we're 50-50. So half of us are on campus, the other half work remote, and then we take turns. So some people, like, I miss them because the days that I'm remote, they're on campus and vice versa. But I've been able to build that rapport with them. And so that was one of the main things for me, like going into the first couple of weeks. That was like on my first 30-day plan, was like meet all the coaches, meet all the staff. I reached out to other departments, the finance department, the accounting, the admissions, the counselors, just everyone that if you've coached, that these relationships are make or break a program, and so that if you're not friends with financial aid, or that you don't have that rapport with financial aid, like, it's going to be hard to ask for, like, hey, we need her paperwork right now. Like, can you do that for us? It's like, so a lot of times it's important to build that rapport because, you're able to help each other out, and especially for me, like, that's something that I love doing. I love reaching out. I love getting to know people in other departments. And then not only that, like, asking how I can be of service to them. Like, what can I do in our department of athletics? What can we do to make your job easier? And so I've gotten great feedback. I had the mayor of Bel Air like reach out. He's like, hey, I heard that you're the new associate athletic director. Like, whatever the town can do for you, like, let us know. So they've taken me in with open arms, but I think a lot of times the energy, I know that the energy you put out is the energy you get in return. And so I've been trying to, good vibes only.
No, you, let's see, come on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I actually hit my mute button. I am a professional podcaster. One of the best things I ever did in taking a new job was exactly what you just articulated. I met with every single coach. It was during the summer, so we had time. And the first thing I said to them was, how can I make your job easier? Okay. And it earned me so much trust right out of the chute. They said, no one's ever asked this before.
Right.
And so great, not because I did it, but great idea, way to come in there and hit the ground running. For our listeners, we are visiting with Patty Medina. She's the Associate Athletic Director at Harford Community College in the DC area. She's also the founder of the Hooper Mentality Foundation. And we're going to hear some more about that when we come back after this next break. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department these days, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. You've heard me mention that we have a Sideline Interactive score table in our gym, and it is fantastic. We use it for games, of course, but we also use it for pep rallies. We use it for signing ceremonies. It's a tremendously versatile tool. If you want to find out more about their great products, go to sidelineinteractive.com or call 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo, and you can see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. I promise you, you will be very impressed. We're back with Patty Medina from Harford Community College, where she's the associate athletic director. Another thing that really stuck out for me, Patty, from your LinkedIn profile was the Hooper Mentality Foundation. And I went on the website, I looked at a little bit, some really cool stuff, but share with our listeners, what is the Hooper Mentality Foundation? Why'd you start it, and how it works?
Thank you. Yes. That's something that I'm very proud of, especially because it really kept me afloat during my COVID time away from coaching. I was able to channel, everything that I normally channeled into my coaching career. I was able to channel it into my nonprofit. And so what it is Hooper Mentality. We provide basketball camps throughout the United States and Mexico. And throughout these camps, we provide opportunities for the student athletes to become more aware about mental health, right? So we talk about triggers, we talk about coping mechanisms, we talk about different ways that they can learn how to work out and exercise the mental health aspect of it, and so a lot of times as coaches, we say the game is 80% mental, 20% physical, but in all actuality, how many times or how often do coaches really exercise the mental aspect of, athletics? And so the way it came about was when I was coaching, or in the 16 years that I've been coaching, or that I was coaching, I had 4 players commit suicide. And so for me, it was something that I felt like, what could I have done better? Why didn't they reach out? Why couldn't they come and talk to me? Why couldn't they why was that the outcome? And so it wasn't until the 4th player that passed away, I had a conversation with her mom. And we had literally seen her at the alumni game, maybe like a month before. And then when I found out that she had passed away, I met with her mom and I kept apologizing. I kept saying, I'm sorry, I could have done more. Like I failed her as a coach because I didn't provide her with these opportunities, to be able to not feel so helpless, And so one thing that she said to me that really resonated with me and that really changed the trajectory of my purpose was, she said, Patty, she's gone. There's nothing you can do about it now, but there's a lot you can do to make sure that she's the last one. Make sure that she's the last one of your girls that feels that way, And so, it just sat with me, and I was just like, I got to do something. So then when I went during the summer, I went to the Nike coaching clinic, and I went to a Nike coaching clinic, and there was a women in sports coaching Nike clinic. And there they talked about the resources that these Division I schools have. And so UCLA was one of the presenters, and they were talking about how at UCLA, the athletic programs have like their own mental health therapists. Like, most programs at the Division I level, like each team has their own like sports psychologist or their own sports therapist or mental health therapist, or they have an athletic one, right? And so I said, well, imagine if we had that at the elementary school or at the middle school or even at the high school level. Like, this is where we need to really help these young athletes, because by the time they get to college, like, they're all messed up in the head. Like they have to fight so many demons in order to be productive on the court. And so we ended up literally left that conference super empowered, went out to eat with a friend, and like literally at the place where we were sitting, we were eating, and I was like, what should we do? Like, there's something we need to do. And so then that's when we decided, like, hey, let's start this organization that provides, that's an initiative that provides mental health awareness for student athletes at a young age. And we can connect with sports psychologists, we can connect with mental health therapists, we can connect with all these people that work in the field, that are knowledgeable and that are certified, that can come in and help these young men and women, like in the, low income areas. And so it started as a podcast, not a podcast, but a video series. So we had a video series where people would share like their struggles with mental health. And then it started and then we continued as a basketball camp. And then within the camps, we would do yoga, meditation, talk about triggers, talk about mental health awareness and things like that. And then that developed into a whole nother level of, just reaching out to other therapists and talking to therapists throughout the COVID time. So we had Zoom therapy sessions and things like that. So long story short, we ended up having this whole community outreach initiative. And at the time, we didn't have any apparel. Like I had a Hooper Mentality shirt, like my coaches had a Hooper Mentality shirt, but I was in New York and I was on the train and I had my Hooper Mentality hoodie. And this gentleman was like, hey, I like your hoodie. I'm like, thanks. And he was like, what is that? And so we started talking, and kid you not, like he started telling me how he struggled with depression, how he had suicidal tendencies. And so he's just having this full on conversation with me. And it all started because of the hoodie. So then I called my coaches that work with me and I'm like, hey, are you guys getting like the same response from these hoodies? And they're like, yeah, like I've been having such candid and transparent conversations with like complete strangers because of this hoodie. And I was like, I didn't really want to be an apparel company, but hey, let's get this hoodie out even more if it's going to provide people an opportunity to talk about their depression and their mental health, And so sure enough, we decided to launch. We launched on a 3-day weekend, because again, like I don't want to be an apparel company, so we only do like sales for like 3 days every like few months. We haven't had a sale in about a year, and I keep getting people like asking like, hey, when can we get hoodies? But so we had a sale and we ended up selling like 450 items in like 3 days, and we did that about 4 more times, and each time we just kept getting more and more sales. And the cool part was that all the proceeds from those sales really just got poured right back into the camps and the initiatives that we were doing as a nonprofit. So it helped the nonprofit because we didn't have to ask for donors, we didn't have to ask for sponsorship. Like this money was coming in through this apparel. So it was super awesome. And like I said, with my transition from coaching to athletic admin, I haven't really done too much with it. Our last event was the sneaker ball. We had a sneaker ball where we had a gala and everybody showed up in their, their dresses and sneakers, and then they donated shoes, and then we were able to donate those to homeless shelters or other organizations that deal with homeless shelters. So it's a huge initiative that it has like, it's like an octopus of initiatives because it has so many areas that we work with. But all in all, the gist of it is that the more we can help bring awareness to mental health for our student athletes, the more we're doing our job. And so it's awesome. I'll have to send you a hoodie. And it's like I said, it's awesome, and I love it. And everywhere that I work now, like even here at Harford, they know about Hooper Mentality. So like it's even on my bio for Harford, because they want me to implement it wherever I work. And so that was one of the things for me too, that once I started Hooper Mentality, I told myself that I won't work anywhere that won't allow me to apply, the things that we do through Hooper Mentality, that won't let me apply it into the school. And so here I have the support from Ed that he wants us to do camps. He wants us to do these initiatives on campus through Hooper Mentality. So I'm super excited that I can implement both the athletic director position and the Hooper Mentality events into the same school. So super excited about that.
I can imagine. And mental health is such an important part, as you mentioned, of today's training. And I know where your website is. So I'll order my own hoodie to contribute to the cause. But for our listeners who don't know, tell them the website. And then we'll do this again at the end. But tell them how to reach out and pick your brain a little bit. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, like we don't have the hoodies on sale year round. We'll only do like we'll only do like a 3-day sale every so often. I've told myself that I'm giving myself until April to like be not fully, but mostly established here so that I can do that as well. So we're hoping to have our next sale and our first sale since 2020 have it around spring break. So around spring break, we'll be having the hoodies available, but the website is hoopermentality.com. I can be reached on LinkedIn, Patty Medina, on Instagram, coach.patty, Twitter, Coach P Medina, and my email, coachpmedina@gmail. Like these are things, like I said, I want to be able to, if I can make anyone's path to becoming an AD easier, and keep them from having to go through, some of the stuff that I went through, I am more than open to have any candid conversations with anybody. So
again, we'll go over those emails and the website again, but hoopermentality.com, that's pretty easy to remember. For our listeners, we're visiting with Patty Medina, Associate Athletic Director at Harford Community College in the DC area, and also the founder of the Hooper Mentality Foundation. We're going to be back with some more. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. They are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. You won't be disappointed. All right, we're back with Patty Medina, Associate AD at Harford Community College. Coach, we've been asking our guests for the past several months this question that kind of revolves around coaching toughness. 100 years ago, when I was in school, it was very common for my coaches to say, "Come on, Jake, you got to be tough. Come on, Jake, you got to suck it up." And I think over the years since then, we've learned, maybe better ways to try and coach it. So my question to you is, how can a coach or an athletic director expect, their kids or their coaches, to be tough while also being aware of the very real social emotional challenges that, let's say, a Generation Z kid is experiencing? Do you have any advice for us?
Yeah, one of the main things too that, I when I grew up 100 years ago as well, we had a lot of parents that would just tell us to suck it up, or even coaches would say, "Hey, just suck it up. You're fine. You suck it up." And as we became parents, we realized that these are some cycles that aren't very healthy, and that we need to be able to learn how to use our words, that we need to be able how to express what we're feeling without just shutting down or with just compartmentalizing these emotions. And then later they become traumas, or later they become, these internalized issues as we become older. And so one of the main things that I've noticed that helps, whether it's an athletic director or a coach, is being able to get to know your players. And I know a lot of times coaches don't want to spend a lot of time on that, or there's like the liability issue, you don't want to know too much. The least amount of information, the better. It's more paperwork if I find out that, she's suicidal or whatever. Like these are things that a lot of coaches and admin have stepped away from because of the liability aspect and FERPA and whatever, right? And so one of the things for me that I try to the way that I try to approach it is I'm a big Brene Brown fan, right? I'm a big Brene Brown fan. So I'm big on the power of vulnerability. And so a lot of times when I know that someone isn't having a great day, instead of telling them, hey, shake it off, I'll come over, or I'll have them come over to, like, let's say we're on the basketball court, I'll tell them, hey, come here, talk to me, what's going on? And I ask them to verbalize, what's going on. And if it's something that, hey, can you push through this, or do you need time? Because at the end of the day, like, we want to make sure that you're productive. We want to make sure that, basketball is an outlet for you, not a stressor, and a lot of times, like, it ends up being both, a lot of times instead of basketball being an outlet, it becomes a stressor, and it actually makes the mental health a bigger issue. And so a lot of times, I've had players that go and play for really toxic coaches that just don't understand them, or they don't want to understand them, or they don't want to spend time trying to get to know them. And so it's really hard to really ask for full productivity when you don't know what the player is going through. A lot of these players, especially now, you see colleges setting up pantries, food pantries on campus, or different resources for students. Like, you never know, some of these college students might just be living off cup of noodles, and like, you expect them to show up to practice and be fully productive, and they're not eating, and so then for me, like, when I was finding out that my players weren't having breakfast, or that they weren't eating because, let's say, the cafeteria was closed by the time they got out of practice, like, I would have bagels and cream cheese or peanut butter and jelly in my office, and I'm like, hey, you guys come in here. And the more they see that you're willing to help them through these issues, whether they're mental, physical, emotional, the more they are willing to push through for them, But a lot of times, if you just push them to the side and you say, hey, shake it off, you're fine, then they start to say, oh, well, she doesn't care what I'm going through, And so a lot of times we use the example, especially in the mental health field, we use the example that if a player comes in and says, hey, coach, I sprained my ankle, what do we say? Oh, rest, ice, compress, whatever, I forgot the E was. And it's like, elevate, right? We're like, oh yeah, go rest, ice, compress, and elevate. But if a player comes to you and says, hey, coach, like, I'm really just having a day today, like, my mother passed away, or my father passed, whatever, my cat died, or I can't find my cat, you tell them, like, shake it off, go over there, and so we have to be able to find a way to say, hey, you know what, go take a walk, come right back, or what do you need to do? Like, what can I help you how can I help you so that you become productive at practice? Because a player that's not productive at practice is only going to end up becoming either a cancer on the team, or it's just going to be a distraction. So it's better to have a player being fully tapped in mentally and physically checked in than to have them, like, physically there, but not mentally focused, And so it's important to be able to just relate to them, And a lot of times these young adults are growing up in this generation where they don't care if you're an authority figure or not. Like, if you disrespect them, they're not going to show you respect back. Whereas, like, with me, if I'm talking to someone that is supposed to be a higher up, like, I have, without a question, even if they're rude to me, even if they disrespect me, I'm supposed to be, the subordinate and respect. Whereas now we've taught this generation that, hey, if someone is disrespectful, respect given is respect earned, right? So a lot of these students look at people like, you're coming at me in a situation where I never gave you permission to talk to me like that, And so then you have teachers and coaches and police and whatever, what have you, getting frustrated with someone that is, asking and for respect, And so a lot of times I think it really comes down to the relationship that you provide is a relationship you get in return. If I give my players respect and I show that I appreciate them, and that I see them, like, literally see, like, physically, emotionally, everything, just see them. Like, I see you for more than just a player on my team, then the easier it is to build rapport, the easier it is to have them run through walls for you. You know, they'll run through walls for you because they know, like, hey, she cares about me more than these wins and losses. You know, Pat Summitt used to say, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. You know, and so it's like, it's very important. I think that's something that a lot of coaches forget, that these players aren't just, you know, a jersey number. They're not just there to fulfill a quota, a recruit quota, or whatever. Like, they're there sacrificing just as much as the coaches are. You know, and it just comes to mutual respect. So yeah, that's one of the main things I would recommend. You know, these coaches, especially young coaches, you know, they try to come in really, really tough, and it's like, that helps and that used to work, but now with these young adults, it's like you have to earn their respect.
Yeah, you're so right. And you mentioned two of my favorite things, you know, along the way about the relationships, and then the famous quote about they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's just, it was true back then and it's still true now.
Yeah.
Okay? Patty, this has been really cool getting to know you just a little bit and hearing about, you know, the Hooper mentality, but we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. You know, you just started your job there at Harford, but you've been around the athletic block. And so in a moment, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. When we come back from the break, we're going to hear what Patty Medina is going to put in her athletic director toolbox, which is sponsored by Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. So we're going to give Athletic Surveys a shout out, and then we'll be back with Patty Medina's athletic director toolbox selections. Please stay with us. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack as they sponsor the athletic director toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also gives you access to the usually 95% of the parents and the student athletes that really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can shoot them an email at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We're back with Patty Medina, the Associate Athletic Director at Harford Community College and the founder of the Hooper Mentality Foundation. Well, Patty, as we said, you know, you certainly know your way around the world of athletics, but right now I'm going to task you with sending out a brand new AD on their very first job. What 3 tools are going to go into Patty Medina's new athletic director toolbox?
The number one is relationships, right? So building rapport. When you go into any organization as a leader, you want to build rapport. You want to make sure that you establish relationships with those that you are supposed to oversee. If you're a coach, you know, you want to establish relationships with your players and your assistant coaches. And so team cohesion, building rapport is my number one tool. My second one is be genuine and transparent. Don't be afraid to ask for help. So a lot of times we think that when we ask for help, we're showing a weakness, right? We try to do so much. We try to be great at everything, which is, as you know, most of the time it should be, but at the same time, you want to be able to show that vulnerable side because it makes you, 1, more approachable, and 2, it gives you that, you know, you don't put yourself in this grandiose atmosphere. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm your athletic director, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know it all, you know, especially coming into an institution where there's people here that already know how to do half the stuff that I'm supposed to be overseeing and doing. Like, I let them teach me how to do certain things, because now what happens is there's a transfer of power and they have ownership over my progress and my success because they taught me how to do what I'm doing, and so let's say it's budget. There's someone that was doing budgeting while there was no athletic director here, and that person teaches me how to do budget. Now they have ownership over my success because they've taught me how to do this, right? And so that's one of the things for me is like being able to ask for help and allow others to have ownership over your success as much as you do of your own, And lastly, as I mentioned, I'm big on audiobooks. I have audiobooks that I love. One of them, I hadn't crossed my mind until you said earlier something about outliers. So Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers. The Outliers is one of my favorites. There's one that I just listened to last week, and I literally sat and listened to it. It's called Habits for Greatness I have it right here. Habits for Greatness. And then the other one, I have to find the author. It's just a podcast. So it's original podcast by Tim Sharp. So Habits for Greatness. And then lastly, How to Win in the Locker Room First. And so by John Gordon, which I'm sure you've heard of John Gordon. He did the Energy Bus. He did all these other things that are really applicable to any career in coaching in any sport. So for me, and another thing too is find something that you're passionate about, outside of coaching, and how you can make sure that your purpose in life is not just coaching, but that it's kind of leaned in from that, what you learn from coaching is applied into your purpose. And so for me, my purpose is to make sure that these men and women have leadership and that have role models and have, someone that they can see themselves in. But basketball has just been the means in which I've done that, and so now I'm able to impact student athletes in 13 different sports. We have 13 sports here on campus. So now I'm not only being impactful to a basketball team of 14 players, now I'm being impactful to an entire athletic administration, players, coaches, and staff. And so I think for me, those are the number one tools that I would keep in my toolbox, and obviously it's something that will continue to build, especially because I'm only on week 3. But I think for me, that's the important part, because relationships are everything, and you really have people that want to help. And a lot of times we're so accustomed to people getting offended because someone wants to help. Whereas with me, I'm like, I'll take all the help I can get, because like I said earlier, it makes them have ownership over my success as well.
Well, early on, you talked about you have a lot of enthusiasm and exuberance, and there's no question that came out today in a very, very good way. Great tools, and thanks so much for sharing. Once more, if one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit, and also find out more about the Hooper Mentality Foundation, how do they do that?
Hoopermentality.com. My contact information is on that website as well. And Instagram, I'm on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, coach.patty. And like I said, I would love to hear feedback, good or bad, regardless, because at the end of the day, that's how we get better, right? We get better not being told by, oh, good shot. Like I want to hear my bad shot selection as well, So I think it's important to be able to bounce off ideas. So and then I'm always open to being a mentor, if it's somebody that's looking for a mentor. I think it's important. A lot of times we get shy to ask someone, hey, it's weird. Like, hey, can you be my mentor? Like, what? Be my mentor, but again, I've been in that position where I've had to seek out mentorship, because a lot of people don't just say, hey, I want to come help you. Like you'll have to go seek it. So however I can help. And I appreciate you having me. This is my, I love this podcast. I've been able to listen to a few of your guests, and so I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, again, we appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us today, and all the best moving forward with your job at Harford, as well as with the Hooper Mentality Foundation. Okay.
Thank
you. For
so
listeners,
much.
Remember, the Zoom recordings of these interviews are uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you tuning in today. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. And we also want to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can learn more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you by going to hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing.